Pearl, what do you think?
I think it's a good that we're seeing a return to traditionalism. Yeah, I think it's a good thing.
How?
I don't know.
How is the...
Good. She's realizing the less I say, the better I sound. Good.
Women are leaving marriage far more easier than men, and they are doing it because they think there's something better out there for them, that the grass is greener.
She has no idea what she's talking about. This is not why the majority of women are divorcing. A huge reason, actually, that women are leading the divorce, why they lead in initiation of divorce, is because men suck at emotional communication, emotional intelligence, and emotional intimacy. Piers Morgan keeps on having Just Pearly Things on his show. I guess he just really enjoys having her on. 4 days ago, Just Pearly Things came on again, where she's apparently claiming men tend to be better people, which is, at this point, I'm very much not shocked. When I hear things like this from her, I'm just kind of like, well, it's Just Pearly Things, okay. Let's find out what's going to happen. Apparently, this is what Just Pearly Things has been doing since she had to cancel our debate. She's going on this show for the zillionth time.
Model Emily Ratajkowski, one of my favourite dimwits, sparked controversy recently by claiming that getting divorced before 30 is chic.
So it seems that a lot of ladies are getting divorced before they turn 30. And as someone who got married at 26, has been separated for a little over a year, 32, I don't think there's anything better. For all of those people who are stressed or feeling stressed about that, about being divorced, like, it's good. Congratulations.
It's like, congratulations.
I almost get what she was getting at there, but then she totally blew it in the last little bit there.
It's like, congratulations. God, she's ridiculous. Well, divorce is certainly becoming more common. And marriage...
Man, Piers Morgan hates this girl. I mean, she's a little cringy, but most of what she said is that, like, it's not really that big of a deal if you're divorced and you're still young and good looking and you have your money stuff figured out. But the fact that she was like, congratulations, that kind of is pretty cringe.
Marriage itself is becoming a fierce frontier in the raging culture wars. On the one side, there are feminists rejecting a dated concept. On the other, so-called trad wives who think it binds our societies together. Well, trad wives spend their days dutifully cooking and cleaning while their husbands go to work. Esther Williams, who's a 25-year-old trad wife, has amassed hundreds of thousands of followers by showing off her trad wife life online. She even
What? You're not that trad wife, you know, if you have a fucking 100,000 plus TikTok page. Sorry.
She even gave up a job to be the perfect wife. So
what? Could you imagine grounding your entire identity and basically everything you have going for yourself at this point on your marriage, on someone else? Risky.
So is she and others like her saving society, or are they selling out the sisterhood? Well, joining me now is traditional wife and influencer Esther Williams, and in the studio the socialist and author Grace Blakely and YouTuber Pearl Davis. This might be the best lineup in the history of television.
Oh man, I just saw Just Pearly Things. I didn't realize this was about to get super spicy. This is about to get super spicy.
For a debate of this nature, so I'm very excited. All right, Esther Williams, let's start with you as the trad wife. Sell it to me. Why do you think we should all go back to having trad wives in marriages?
Well, I believe that... I actually don't believe that everyone should be a traditional wife. I think that it is a choice, and I think it's a lovely choice if a woman wants to simply be a wife and a mother, and that's enough for her. And it's a simple way of living with traditional gender roles. It's balanced, and we don't have to do it all as women. I think we've proven that it's possible, but at what cost, right?
Right, and
Pretty good answer. Okay, much better than I was expecting. I'm glad that she clarified that she's not even saying this is necessarily what she says everybody should be doing. I think that's pretty cool. Okay.
in terms of what being a trad wife involves, what do you think it means to be a trad wife?
Well, to adhere to traditional gender roles. So what I mean by that is the husband, he is the provider of the home. He goes out, he works, and he knows how to protect his family if need be. And the wife, she's the homemaker. She does the cooking, she does the cleaning, and she takes care of the home and children if there are any, and herself, of course. So it's adhering to traditional gender roles.
Okay, Grace, I'm sure you thoroughly agree with this, don't you?
Look, I mean, what Esther's just said about the fact that women should be able to choose, obviously I completely agree. And, you know, men should be able to choose as well. I think the feminist critique of traditional gender roles and gender ideology isn't that some people like to stay at home and others don't. It's that you shouldn't be bound to pursue a certain life based on the sex that you were born into at birth. The one issue I do have is I know actually a friend of mine whose sister got involved in the TRAD wife movement in the US, basically. She was quite young. She got married to someone who was like, this is what we're doing. You're going to be a TRAD wife. And basically came to regret it. She felt like she'd been controlled, like her life became very small, and she couldn't get out. She couldn't escape because, you know, she'd lost all her friends, and this has become basically her entire life. And it concerns me that sometimes we see this narrative on social media that women have to be a certain way in order to get a husband. So you have to be this like particular model of femininity for people to love you. And I think that's really sad because I don't think anyone should have to...
Balanced view from the feminists, too. So far, we're getting some pretty decent commentary. How much longer till Pearl comes up and just obliterates this rather balanced and nice conversation?
Shave off any parts of themselves to be loved or to you know, find a husband or, you know, anything like that.
All right, Pearl, what do you think?
I think it's a good that we're seeing a return to traditionalism. Yeah, I think it's a good thing.
How?
I don't know.
How is the...
Good. She's realizing the less I say, the better I sound. Good.
feminist movement of the last few decades, how has it gone for you? I mean, when you look at it and see how women have progressed, do you think it's been largely a force for good? Or do you think, as the TRAD wives do, that perhaps we've lost that sense of gender rules, for want of a better phrase, which actually work very well for many people?
I mean, we've seen families disappear. You know, I saw a study the other day that said only 25% of, I mean, this is an American stat, but American households have families. So I guess there's positives and there's negatives.
What? 2021, 40% of Americans have families. 37.57% are married couples. 30% of households comprise a single person. Far fewer than 30% of Americans live in them. Roughly 13% of American adults live alone. 13%. Okay, so... See, what she's doing with the study thing is what I feel like people think I do. I think that people think that I do that. Where I'm just like, well, I just saw a study that said that, and then you look it up and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I never do this though. She's just like, did she really see that study? Or is she just making that up? She's probably just making it up and it's like, well, I'm sure you can find a study for it. Come here, bug. I want to kill that thing. There's a bug flying around me.
And there's negatives, but it's like at what cost, you know?
What to you?
150 years ago, the average woman had 7 kids, 85% of people were married.
I mean,
you know,
there was also much higher infant mortality, and women died very young, and you know.
Yeah, but not just that, but also it's like, why were there so many more people married back then? Like, the reason she had 7 kids and all this shit was because she had no choice but basically operate as a baby-making machine to survive in society, the way that society was set up. Like, she says that as if it's just a net good without any understanding of why this was the case.
I mean, women were more depressed than ever before. We're on antidepressants.
I mean,
women over the age of 45 are the least happy demographic.
There are a lot of very...
The issue...
So what's interesting about the women being more depressed thing is that there actually is a increase in depression for, I don't know if it's for everybody, but, well, I mean, generally for everybody, yeah, but I know for women at least, it's a weird psychological thing where basically because there are more choices, because there are higher possibilities and higher goals that could be achieved, it can sometimes give you anxiety and make you feel like you're not good enough or make you feel paralyzed because you don't know what the fuck to do. So sometimes when people say like, oh, well, women used to be happier, now they're unhappy, that doesn't mean that it's bad for women to have choices, but it means that there are ways in which you have to address making decisions and ways by which you have to navigate that.
Again, I've said this before, marriage isn't marriage anymore. The average marriage is 7 years. We have things like no-fault divorce, leave if you're unhappy. So
what does that mean, marriage isn't marriage anymore? Because
Well,
there have been so many marriages over the course of history where people have been very unhappy. Either the man or the woman has been very unhappy. And they've been forced basically to stay in a marriage. It could have been an abusive marriage. It could have been an emotionally abusive marriage. And that would, we have one life. Why would you spend it with someone who doesn't make you happy?
Marriage was about duty. And this is the problem we have.
Yeah, so marriage sucked then. That's what you're saying. I don't want to be in a marriage that is about duty. Maybe that's why divorce is higher, because people are done treating relationships like a duty, like a job, like a checklist and a chore. We don't want to fucking do this shit. I also feel like that would be really insulting to the partner. Like, imagine if you're like, well, my wife doesn't love me. She's actually quite miserable and unhappy with me, but you know, she's doing her duty.
Men tend to be better people than us. Yeah, they really do. They tend to.
No.
They tend to do the right thing.
They are a much maligned species. I agree.
I mean, there's a reason we have phrases like a man of his word, right?
Yeah.
Not a woman of her word. Because men.
She always does this too. Appeals to like slogans as if this means something. My God, you have to be so lost.
Men will actually stick things out. Women, when shit gets hard, we just leave. And you're proving my point. What was your first answer? My happiness, right?
Jesus Christ. I hate this bug.
My happiness, right?
Of course. Everyone deserves to be happy. Everyone deserves to be loved.
A family doesn't work when it's about you. It's supposed to be about your kids. Well, and that's the problem.
So your entire life should basically, as a woman, your entire life basically should revolve around another person. One, it should be your husband, then it should be your kids. This is why, by the way, this traditional stuff, when you preach it this way, is depressing and unhinged.
It's about everyone. There's a balance and a compromise
okay,
in relationships. Am I allowed to talk now? Or
okay, go ahead.
Look, I think relationships are about balance. They're about compromise. They're about knowing and understanding yourself, learning to, know and understand another person. Eventually, potentially, if you want to, bringing children into the world and teaching them how to do that as well. Teaching them to balance a sense of their own identity with the love that they have for another person. And, for example, I know an older woman, actually, who's a friend of our family, who got divorced at about 60. She had, this lovely family. They were together since they were 18. And she said, I got to a point after I'd stopped being a mother and, I was just kind of getting on, I realized I'd lost my sense of who I was. And I didn't really feel like I knew who I was anymore because I'd always just been a wife and a mother. And I wanted to go.
That's actually a good point. And it's also a common thing that happens with parents where it's like you have a kid and then everybody starts acting as if you no longer exist. It's like it stops being like, how are you doing? How's your day? Are you feeling okay? To just like, how's the kid? How's the kid? Where are the kids? How's the kids doing? It's like you can like walk by people. They won't even look at you. They just see the kids. There is definitely a middle ground there where, yeah, of course, if you have kids, they need to be your priority. And you need to be able to do what's necessary to raise them and discipline them properly. But it also doesn't mean that you just cease existing. And I've always fucking hated that. I've always hated the like, you have kids, so now you need to just give up everything you want. It doesn't even matter anymore. It's like, no, fuck you. I can't have an entire life that I hate living and also be a good father. It's like there's this middle ground that exists, but that nobody talks about, and everybody acts as if it's just like one side or the other.
Go out and explore that. And I think that's fantastic. Good for her.
What is traditionalism?
I don't know what you think traditionalism is.
I would say a modern mentality is me before the family. I would say traditionalism is the family before me, especially in women.
You're onto something.
And so what it's interesting you said 60.
I don't know if that's true. I don't think it's me before the family, but I think it's that in order for me to prioritize my family, I also need to know how to prioritize myself at times. It doesn't mean you always prioritize yourself, and it doesn't mean you prioritize yourself at the expense of the family.
I've interviewed 600, 700 people roughly in the past year and a half. I've done hundreds of shows interviewing people about relationships. And what I find is the 60-year-olds a lot of those women led their daughters astray. There's a reason we're in this mess, right? A lot of those women had the wrong mentality when it came to marriage and had exactly the mentality that you're talking about.
Which is that one should prioritize balancing one's own sense of identity with compromise and relationship with someone else.
It's myself before the marriage.
But
that's not myself before the marriage. It's like myself matters too within this marriage.
Yeah,
And it's
I
really
think there's an
unfortunate
interesting
because
point
I would
here,
say the
actually.
women of our
There's an
generation
interesting
really
point.
are suffering because of the advice of the women of the past.
There's an interesting point here, right, which is that we do live in a very individualistic society, and we're all told, actually, I think a lot of the time in our relationships as well, you have to be a certain way if you want to receive love. You have to abide by these norms.
Yeah.
You have to be a certain level of attractiveness. You have to
men-
earn a certain amount of
men-
money. It's all about you, and that's not what love is.
All right,
love
let me
is
bring
very
in.
shared.
All right, listen.
know
It's actually
this
been
stuff.
very interesting listening to this. Let me bring it back in Esty. So, Esty, in terms of trad values, like my wife puts the bins out, for example. Right? I've never asked her to. She's just adopted that role in our house. So I never put the bins out. I don't know if I should feel ashamed of myself. I do other stuff, but I don't put the bins out. As a trad wife, do you put your bins out? Is that part of the gender
What's that? Does that mean like taking the trash out? Is this British speak for taking the trash out?
rule of the 50s? Is that what used to happen? Or is the man supposed to do that? I mean, how do these rules work in reality?
It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the 50s and the 60s, especially in our household. Well, to answer your question, actually, I don't put the trash bins out. My husband does that, but I think we have this this thing in our household where he does most of the outdoor work. I do all the indoor work. Of course, he works and provides, and I'm the homemaker. That's what works for us. But
And in relation to what Pearl said, is part of that a sense of being dutiful and having no problem actually with being dutiful in a marriage?
Yes, I believe that traditionalism it is putting your family before yourself, and I think it is having those traditional values that were once definitely more in place in God, family, and love.
So it's not even family first. Traditionalism is actually God first, then family first. Man, so for a woman to be a traditional wife, it's God first, kids second, husband third, household fourth. Where does the woman and her own well-being come on this list?
We live in a very selfish society now. You know, you see self-love printed everywhere, right? And women, speaking of divorce and marriage, women are leaving marriage far more easier than men, and they are doing it because they think there's something better out there for them, that the grass is greener.
She has no idea what she's talking about. This is not why the majority of women are divorcing. A huge reason, actually, that women are leading the divorce, why they lead in initiation of divorce, is because men suck at emotional communication, emotional intelligence, and emotional intimacy. A lot of men are raised and taught that showing emotions and expressing emotions in a certain way is wimpy or girly or a pussy move or is beta, or as these red pill people will say, if you cry in front of your girlfriend, she's going to get turned off, she's going to leave you, she's going to think you're a bitch. This kind of shit builds up. Men don't have the proper emotional tools or emotional skills even to invest in themselves and understand themselves emotionally, nonetheless understand another person and be emotionally intimate with another person. And this isn't like an attack on men. This isn't like men are just bad and dumb. It's one of the many ways in which some of these expectations placed on masculinity harms men in the long term. And it's trickling into now harming their marriages as well. Divorce therapists have spoken on this issue. They have talked about that women oftentimes initiate more divorces because their emotional needs aren't met, which is why we need to be willing to address why men aren't so good at meeting women's emotional needs, because they oftentimes don't even know how to meet their own emotional needs.
They're finding out that is wrong, and they're going through divorce after divorce. And, you know, marriage is a bond, and it's a sacred bond where two become one under God. And that's beautiful, and you have to protect that at all costs. And I think part of that is putting your partner's needs before your own every single day. And I try and do my best, and I think of my husband as much as I can and what will please him and make him happy.
I love the sound of this. Sorry, I mean, obviously I don't. I wouldn't dare to express an opinion.
I think that's, a lovely way to think about relationships if it's reciprocal.
Yes.
You're talking about.
I actually think that's true also, that in order to have a good and healthy relationship, you need to be able and willing to sacrifice your own desires for another person at times. At times, though. This is why I feel like the balance is constantly missed, is because, of course, there's a balance between being a pushover and just being dragged around by your partner, or being this horrible person that doesn't know how to compromise ever. Of course, there are going to be times that you need to sacrifice your own desires. You might need to make some sacrifices, or go places you don't want to go, or do things you're not really that excited about. Sometimes that's part of building a relationship with somebody. That's part of being married, is sucking it up. And, well, if she wants to go on this trip or she wants to do this thing, well, that's something that means something to her. So I'm going to do my best to just get on board with it.
God and family and tradition.
This is the
Paul,
problem.
can I please
women always
finish
keep
my
score.
sentence?
Life isn't about
I thought
keeping
women were
score.
supposed to, recognize their place and learn not to speak over other people. No, so
Yes, thank you. Woohoo! Finally, somebody.
look, I think it's reciprocated. You talked there about religion, about Christianity, and about self-love. The kind of most important commandment. There's two most important commandments: love your neighbor as yourself. So that requires a foundation of self-love.
Oh, good point. I never thought of that. That's a solid argument right there. This girl just brought in some heat.
Love your neighbor as yourself. So that requires a foundation of self-love and respect for oneself and knowledge of one's own identity and what one wants to be able to receive and give the love that you're going to have in a solid and healthy relationship. I think it has to be mutual.
You're not looking forward to it. Getting you all back in about 10 years' time to see if either of you two are married and have stayed married, and to see particularly, Esther, if you're still married and still happily married and still feel exactly the same way you do today about what marriage should be. It would be a really interesting show in about 10 years.
Also, how happy we are in general with our lives and all the other many rich aspects of our relationships and our careers and all of these things.
Yep. Great debate. Thank you very much, ladies. Nice to see you all.
Okay, so that one wasn't even that bad, mostly because Just Pearly Things didn't talk that much. Again, the problem always arises when it's this is how it should be. As soon as you hear that women should be more traditional, then you have a problem, because no, women should have the choice. Women should have the choice to be traditional if that's what they want, but they should be able to choose that because that's what they want, not because it's what they have to do to survive society, or because that's what God says, or something else.